What is psychological first aid for schools, and why should your district consider attending training? We don't get to plan when a crisis occurs. That's why we have to be prepared. And this is not an effective strategy. Too many school staff believe that it won't happen here. We can't ignore what is happening in a crisis. We have to be prepared so we can respond rapidly, efficiently, and effectively. We ask schools to think about what they need to do to ensure their district is ready to respond in a crisis. Are staff members in every building in your district ready to respond at minute one of a crisis? This is the manual that we use for training. It is from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. So where does PFAS fit in the big picture of school safety? This is the Nebraska School Safety Model: prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery, which is also the National Emergency Management Cycle from FEMA. Every school district has an Emergency Operations Plan, or EOP. EOP training is done with teams of people from each school district that include school staff, law enforcement, emergency managers, and fire and rescue. The EOP helps develop a coordinated plan of response for dealing with hazards, threats, and incidents. PFAS is one component of the EOP, as is the Standard Response Protocol, or SRP. This PFAS team is actively involved in assisting schools to be prepared for dealing with all standard response protocols. The Emergency Operations Plan is the umbrella that all components of the safety model fall under. The PFAS team is involved throughout the entire school safety model. Prevention is mitigating or minimizing the harmful effects from the crisis. We encourage teams to take an active role in monitoring and analyzing building data. We want all school staff to know how to report to the PFAS team any differences they see in school behavior or academic performance. Do your teachers know how to monitor and report concerns? Do they know how to build protective factors? Training and practice are essential for the successful implementation of crisis plans. Each PFAS team works with EOP team members to create lessons and schedule practices for all the standard response protocol actions: lockdown, secure, shelter, hold, and evacuate. The minute the incident starts, the PFAS team begins responding. In the response phase, the team works to stabilize the crisis situation. Standard response protocol and standard reunification method, if there's an evacuation from the school site, are utilized. Recovery deals with how to restore the learning and teaching environment after a crisis to ensure that current and long-term needs are met. Recovery is the traditional role of crisis teams. The PFAS team is involved in all portions of the school safety model: prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. All schools have MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support, in place. PFAS team members are involved in ensuring that systems and practices are in place to proactively teach students coping skills and to monitor students who have experienced trauma. The goal is to build a positive, safe, and supportive learning environment. The more time you spend to build Tier 1, the more successful your response to a crisis will be. So Tier 1 is things we do for all students. We want to be proactive and preventative, and we know if we do a good job on Tier 1, the tasks in Tier 2 and 3 will be manageable. The PFAS team is involved in identifying and teaching behavior expectations in their building, ensuring that all students are taught coping skills, making sure there's a curriculum in place that teaches essential life skills, that there's a district policy and procedures and a curriculum in place for suicide prevention, that all standard response protocol actions have been taught and practiced, that there's a bullying prevention curriculum being utilized in the district, and making sure that all teachers, all staff members are able to recognize warning signs and risk factors and know how to build protective factors. Tier 2 are targeted strategies, things we do for some students. The PFAS team is involved in monitoring data and developing interventions. They ensure that there's a sense of calm, hope, and support. They assist staff with monitoring at-risk students. The team encourages kids to use coping skills and to begin that recovery phase. You might be using things such as small groups, social academic instructional groups, and assisting with a system such as check-in, check-out. Other strategies that might be used are CBITS, which is Cognitive Behavioral Intervention for Trauma in Schools, and Bounce Back, which is the elementary version of CBITS. Tier 3 includes intensive strategies and supports for those students who are having difficulty coping. In Tier 3, your team will continue with the recovery phase and provide more intensive supports for those students. You may need to do more debriefing, intensive debriefing, some more work with intensive or small groups. You might add CBITS, trauma in focus CBITS, or you may even be assisting with referring students for individual therapy outside the district. School staff, students, parents, law enforcement, fire and rescue, and the community need to know and use common language such as standard response protocols. This will ensure an expedited response in a crisis situation. Some key points about PFAS. PFAS provides staff with skills to intervene quickly when a hazard, threat, or incident occurs. It's an evidence-informed intervention model that assists students, staff, and families. It provides organization and structure to your crisis response. PFAS utilizes skill strengths that already exist on your staff. It offers practical assistance and information, and it can be used by any trained staff member or community partner. It uses brief interventions that produce positive results that last. And PFAS builds resiliency. It helps students and staff members recover and utilize effective adaptive coping strategies. We train staff to be aware of at-risk populations, such as students and staff who've experienced prior traumatic events or who have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. PFAS is sensitive to racial and cultural diversity. Teams become more aware of their own biases and values and more aware of the diversity in their buildings. We also discuss considerations for students with disabilities. Teams are encouraged to include staff who work with students eligible for special education services when planning for crisis response and identifying accommodations which might be needed. This timeline is a checklist that takes you through prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery from the school safety model, from the district and ESU standpoints. Remember, PFAS is not a cookie-cutter process. Teams are encouraged to review and edit the steps listed. What works for your district? This timeline resource can be found on the NDE PFAS website. So what are the 8 core actions of PFAS? The first core action is contact and engagement. Teams work with initiating contacts or learning how to respond to contacts by students and staff in a non-intrusive, compassionate, and helpful manner. The second core action is safety and comfort. Teams work with enhancing immediate and ongoing safety and providing physical and emotional comfort. The third core action is stabilization. In stabilization, staff members learn how to calm and orient emotionally overwhelmed or disoriented students and staff. In information gathering, teams learn how to identify immediate needs and concerns and how to gather direct and indirect data. In practical assistance, they learn how to help students and staff in addressing immediate needs and concerns. Connection with social supports is the next core action. In this core action, they learn how to establish brief or ongoing contacts with sources of support that might include family, friends, teachers, or other school or community resources. The seventh core action is information on coping. This, we spend a lot of time talking about coping skills, and they get information on stress reactions and coping to reduce distress and learn how to promote adaptive functioning. And the last core action is linkage with collaborative services, where they learn how to link available services that are needed at the time of the critical incident or crisis and in the future. This is a great descriptor of what we need to look like as PFAS team members. Calm and serene on the outside, and problem solving and thinking like crazy inside. Teams utilize tabletop exercises to work through SRP scenarios and consider how the response would look like for their district, which provides opportunities to apply skills. A tabletop exercise involves the team in working through a time-phased, realistic scenario. The interactive session exposes the participants to problem-solving techniques and recovery actions in a non-threatening, low-stress environment. Through participation in the exercises, team members are better prepared to respond to an actual emergency and will be able to proactively address shortcomings in their district EOP plans. We know social media has a significant impact when dealing with a crisis. In training we talk about how in years past the administrative team could work all day on its response statement after a crisis. In today's world, we don't even have 15 minutes to respond. Social media and parent demands for information are very different. PFAS teams learned how to write 2793 social media messages for all standard response protocols. We know social media can be effectively utilized to push out helpful and accurate information throughout a crisis response. This is our end goal. We want all children to feel safe, supported, and be ready to learn. Thanks for watching. Our contact information is listed on the screen.